Mr. Hans van Balen, President, Liberal International, Dr. Rajiva Vijayasinghe, Chairman, Council of Asian Liberals and Democrats, Mr. Jufri Mahmood, Chairman, Singapore Democratic Party, distinguished guests, colleagues, and dear friends. I want to express my deep gratitude to the Liberal International for this award. It is a recognition of that most profound of human aspirations, that is, the desire to live in freedom and dignity. When one receives such an award as prestigious as this, the natural feeling is one of celebration. But I must confess that the feeling I had when I learned of the award given to me was not of joy, but of humility. Because when you think of the many luminaries that have received this prize in years past, people like Aung San Suu Kyi, Václav Havel, Helen Suzman, Sam Rainsy, all of whom struggled so valiantly and gave so greatly for freedom's cause, one cannot but feel very humble. Then there are the Chia Tai Pos, Lim Hock Siews, and the Said Zaharis of this world, who endured the long, dark years of political imprisonment and emerged unbowed, in fact, taller than ever. I am but a political dwarf standing on the shoulders of these giants. Their deeds and courage have inspired me and paved the way for many of us to continue this noble struggle for freedom in Singapore. To them, as well as to Vincent Cheng, Teo So Long, and others who were so justly detained, who were so unjustly detained and are now beginning to speak up, to Gandhi Ambalam, to my sister Seok Chin, and John Tan and others who faced repeated prosecution all these years because they stood up for their constitutional rights to freedom of speech and assembly. To all of them, I accept this award not for myself, but on their behalf. But for every one of us whose name is mentioned, there are many others who suffer quietly in the background, but whose unwavering support has made the task much more bearable. I'd like to mention, with your indulgence, two of them tonight. First, I'd like to introduce to you my mother, Lo Non Neo, whom I love dearly. "20 years ago, when I first told her the crazy idea that I was going to join the opposition, she, like most Singaporean mothers, went ballistic. But deep down, she knew I was doing the right thing, and since then, she has stoically endured the pain and worried the worries that only mothers can. But she has always been there with me and for me. Then there is this other lady, who many of you might know as my better half. When she said, 'I do,' at the altar, I don't think she quite knew what she was getting into. It was certainly much more than she had bargained for. And yet, she never complained, suffering with quiet resolve the years of difficulty that I put her through. In fact, May is the strong one in our family, and without her support, I would not have been able to do the work that I do. I don't want to say thank you to her because those are mere words that cannot express adequately how I feel. It would demean all that she has contributed to both our lives. Now I want to spend the next few moments addressing the challenges that confront our nation. For years, we have been deprived of an opposition, and because of this, we have had a government that has been left unchecked and whose policies have been left unscrutinized. As a result, we have built, especially in recent years, an economy based on high finance. Beneath the facade, however, lies a society bankrupt in morality. Our government aids the worst that the West offers in terms of greed and exploitation, but rejects the good that it espouses in the values of human rights and democracy. Instead of engaging in productive activity, we learn to get rich by trading bits of paper that Wall Street issues. We engage in vice to raise our GDP, and we change our banking laws that attract wealthy tax evaders and illicit funds. If the 2008 financial meltdown in the US has taught us anything, it is that Wall Street bankers' appetite for lucre is insatiable, and that scruples count for nothing when it comes to generating profit. The toxic instruments conjured up by the Lehman Brothers and other banks are but a stark reminder of the greed that Western banks indulge in. The stability and chaos that they wreak in the global financial system, not to mention the utter misery they cause to the average citizen, is indeed great. Yet this system is what our government has copied, lock, stock, and barrel. And Wall Street's values are the ones we have chosen to adopt. Based on such a setup, we have styled ourselves as a financial center. Today, we find such a system in danger of imploding as these banking institutions cannibalize the very economy upon which they are built, so much so that they have stirred outrage across the world. We have imitated the crass consumerism in the West, deriving pleasure in accumulating things, and not just things, expensive things. We are thrilled that Orchard Road is lined with glitterati like Prada and Gucci and Versace. And we are one of the biggest consumers of the latest gadgets and gizmos that technology offers. We pursue everything except that which makes life worthwhile. The lust for things material have blinded us to the values of human decency. We think nothing of allowing Robert Mugabe to come here on a shopping spree, even as he maims and kills the people just to hold on to power. We don't bat an eye when Burmese generals come here for rest and recreation, even as their soldiers torture dissidents, exploit labor, and rape womenfolk. As long as there is money to be made, nothing else matters, does it? We build gated communities with security guards to keep out the have-nots, condominium fortresses that promise ever greater exclusivity and opulence. But outside these high walls, we see the number of poor growing in our midst. We see the lines for free meals lengthening at churches and temples. We see our elderly dragging their aching bodies to work so that they can earn a few dollars to feed themselves. We'll become calloused and immune to all this. We shrug our shoulders and we sigh a sigh of resignation. After a while, it even ceases to bother us. We've lost the ability to feel outrage at life's injustices. Our workers hold down 2, 3 jobs just to earn enough to pay the bills. The younger ones are unable to find jobs that pay enough. Their dreams of buying a flat and starting a family made exceedingly difficult to realize. The inequality begins even before one enters the labor market. Our school system is designed such that the well-heeled get to send their children to elite schools located in the richer enclaves, while the rest of the population have to contend with neighborhood schools with inferior resources. Social and economic inequality in Singapore is striking. In terms of wealth disparity among the more complex economies, ours is the most hideous. Now, many years ago, when the ministers upped their salaries, and believe me, they were modest compared to today's levels, we criticized the move. We accused them of engaging in the politics of greed. Well, the PAP countered, saying that we were engaging in the politics of envy. Why, they argued, were we unhappy that others were working hard and making more money? Well, the same can be said of our criticisms of the super-rich in this country. The question is, do they have a point? Are we not casting an envious eye on the wealthy even as we rail against their riches? If all we offer is the call to make the rich among us poorer and the poor among us richer, so that all can continue to consume even more greedily the earth's limited resources, then we have not moved the moral needle. We are, in fact, merely engaging in the politics of envy. This is why it is important to state clearly our case. We are not opposed to wealth, but wealth inequality. We must demonstrate how the widening income gap harms the common good. More than just indignation, we need to offer a platform of why we see egalitarianism as a moral and more effective way in which to organize economic society. To do that, we need a national conversation on morality. We need to have a politics of moral engagement. We see the inequity. We see the absence of justice. We see the misery caused by greed and domination. Now we must ensure that an alternative be recognized, one that ultimately replaces the status quo. That alternative is to ensure that even as we narrow wealth disparity, we create a community that is less polarized and more cohesive, one where shared public space between the haves and the have-nots increases rather than decreases. When the wealthy and the needy live in two worlds, it is hard, if not impossible, to forge one society. If the rich continue to buy car after car, no matter how expensive COEs get, while the MRT trains run over capacity, what incentive is there for them to want to take public transport? If our missionary and government-linked schools, government-aided schools, continue to cater to children from affluent families and the neighborhood schools are fed everyone else, how are children from different backgrounds going to mingle? If our condominiums continue to retreat more and more into exclusive havens, while HDB dwellers are crammed into smaller and smaller areas, how are the two communities going to coexist? Such polarization brutalizes society. It erodes cohesiveness. It corrodes values and that fosters societal togetherness. It fuels resentment and ultimately instability. So the problem is clear. The socio-economic inequality that exists today cannot continue, not if we are to achieve a stable and progressive society. The remedy is equally obvious, and I might add, compelling. The case for a more egalitarian system where the laws are not stacked in favor of the rich and where society is less economically polarized must be vigorously advocated. The question is, who is going to do it? Who among us is willing to come forward to lead the cause? Sadly, political leadership does not come naturally to Singaporeans. We have been ingrained with the notion that only the PAP has the smarts to lead this nation. My friends, politics is only as good as the people who practice it. And justice is only as alive as the people who are willing to defend it. Singapore will not change if those of us who wish to see democratic politics established in this country remain pusillanimous in mind and parsimonious in energy. Let us not continue to allow fear to dominate us, to freeze us into inaction. Because fear strangulates ideals. It blurs moral clarity. In life, we are confronted with choices. We can choose to live passionately and for what we believe in, or we can continue this path of timidity and fearful silence. Of course, when we speak out without fearing those who rule over us, we are labeled as confrontational and worse, destructive. And the powers that be will do everything they can to marginalize us. We must recognize that this is another form of intimidation. The danger is that if we fear such intimidation and retreat from political engagement in order to appear acceptable and quote-unquote moderate, then we will not have the courage to offer an alternative vision and, more importantly, work to achieve it. Let us have the confidence to see that we have the ability to change the system, not yield to it, that we can win over public opinion, not pander to it. In other words, let us be leaders, not mere politicians. For leaders point the way and persuade the people to come along. Politicians seek merely to win votes, even if it means imitating those that hold power. We have enough politicians in Singapore. What we need now are leaders. We can and will succeed, but only if we stop spending our time doubting our own ability and losing our focus of doing the hard work of organizing ourselves and planning our strategies. The parents of change are perseverance and persistence. There is no shortcut. Again, I want to thank the Liberal International for this award, but what I really long for, more than anything else, is to win the ultimate prize of freedom for the people of Singapore. The journey has been long, but along the way I've had the honor of working with some of the most patriotic Singaporeans on this island, and I've been enriched by their experience. You know, years ago, we sent our kids to attend a friend's birthday party. And after the party, we picked them up. And it was a nice big house that they had gone to. And on the way, you know, we was driving this rickety van that we had rented to sell our party newspaper. And the kids were rather pensive and rather quiet, very uncharacteristic, on the way home. When they got home, my eldest daughter, Anlin, she was younger then, she turned to me and asked, "Papa, are we rich?" It was one of those questions that was as innocent and simple as it was complicated. It took me a while as I searched for an answer, and finally I said to her, "Yes, we are. Mom and I may not be able to send you to school in a big car. We may not be able to let you live in a big house with your own rooms. And we might not be able to take you on expensive holidays. But yes, we are rich. And you know why? Because we have you. I may be a bankrupt, and I may not be able to afford many things in this world. But when I am home with my loved ones, I feel like the richest man on earth. And when I survey this room, and when I look at all of you this evening, how can I not feel rich? If I had remained an academic at NUS, I would not have had the joy and privilege of knowing you. I may have lost the one thing that I love, which is doing research and teaching. But what I have lost, I have more than gained in my serving with you in this great cause of freedom. You have enriched me and touched me more than you know. And for that, I say thank you. I feel a sense of kindred spirits with you because I know that we share the same ideals, and we measure our success not by the type of car that we drive or the size of the house that we live in, but by the number of minds we unfetter, the number of young lives that we give hope to, the number of the poor whom we empower. To accumulate this kind of wealth, the kind that matters most in life, let us continue on this journey together and press on with what we have started. For that old grandmother in her 80s whose bent and gnarled figure struggles with the sun and the rain just to collect cardboard to sell so that she can feed herself, we press on. For that breadwinner who cannot find a job that pays decent wages so he can scrape together enough money to send his children to school, we press on. For that child who wants to learn and excel but who is constantly told that she is not good enough because of the school that she goes to, we press on. For those who seek a more equal and just society, we press on. We press on because the fire and hope of justice still burns brightly in this, the Singapore Democratic Party. The harder the oppression, the brighter the fire burns. And that fire can only be doused by the waters of freedom and democracy. And so, my friends, let us continue to fight the fight that so many across the world have fought, so that we too may come to know the exhilaration that comes with freedom, the compassion that comes with justice, and the wisdom that comes with an open and democratic society. Thank you, God bless, and good night.
Something inside so strong, I know that I can make it, though you're doing me wrong, so wrong. You thought that my